In October of 2013, just over a month before the Xbox One was released, the Xbox 360 reached a quiet milestone: 80 million units sold. Microsoft had spent the previous 8 years proving they were a contender in the console market, and the 360 was a force to be reckoned with.
But when the Xbox arrived in November of 2013, the tide quickly began to turn. Over the course of the next 7 years, Microsoft's standing in the console race was in a nearly constant state of flux.
Die-hard fans, cutting-edge technology, and an unrelenting willingness to innovate and evolve would help keep the Xbox One afloat, but a lack of first-party blockbusters and the ever-looming juggernaut that was the PlayStation 4 would make the 8th generation an uphill battle for Microsoft.
The Xbox 360 was riding high in June of 2011, but the rumor mill was slowly picking up speed behind closed doors at E3 that year. Crytek was supposedly already hard at work on TimeSplitters 4 using Microsoft's rumored next-gen hardware, and rumors said the next Xbox would be revealed at E3 2012. 6 months later, speculation shifted as chip manufacturers, middleware firms, and industry insiders began sparking rumors of an E3 2013 reveal, followed by a release that fall. Rumors swirling around Lionhead Studios' Fable Next and Epic's Unreal Engine 4 helped lend some credibility, but Microsoft still wasn't ready to talk about the next generation of Xbox hardware. In April, IGN wrote a very short and unassuming article about the Xbox One potentially requiring a constant internet connection. On February 20th of 2013, Sony announced the PlayStation 4. After nearly a year of mostly radio silence, April of 2013 would prove to be one of the most tumultuous months in Xbox history. Leaks showed that the next Xbox would be always online, always connected, and that games installed to the Xbox One, then codenamed Durango's hard drive, would be interrupted or suspended without an internet connection. Fans were pissed. It limited options on how gamers could play games they owned. It also seemed like a direct attack on the people who relied on used games.
To make matters worse, Microsoft's then creative director Adam Orth took to Twitter to air his grievances, with fans complaining about an always-online future. It was a short, misguided rant that ended with Orth using an image of a smirking President Obama and the words, "Deal with it." It did not go over well, prompting Orth's departure from Microsoft the following week. On May 21st, 2013, weeks before E3, Microsoft unveiled the Xbox One to the public. Introduced as an all-in-one system for games, entertainment, and television, the Xbox One boasted powerful hardware and a holiday 2013 release date. The reveal was confusing. The newest version of Kinect, which would be required to use the Xbox One, took center stage, and audiences were told that it would be required for the Xbox One to function, raising some pretty serious privacy concerns, which we'll get back to in a bit. A lack of backwards compatibility, zero explanation on what exactly always online, always connected meant, and a major focus on the entertainment aspect of the Xbox One left some gamers questioning why they should care. Once again, fans were pissed. In June, Microsoft clarified that the always-online aspects of the Xbox One would utilize a low-powered connected state, allowing the console to perform background tasks like updates. Additionally, users would also be able to trade in used games, and the Kinect would allow users full control of what information it was given access to and what it did with that information. The answers weren't exactly ideal, but at least gamers had a better understanding of what to expect.
E3 2013 was a historically bad showing for Microsoft and the Xbox One. In its morning showcase, it announced that the console would retail for $499. That afternoon, Sony announced that its PlayStation 4 would cost $100 less. Now, in an interview with Giant Bomb, Microsoft walked back their always-online policy, ensuring that disc-based gamers need not worry about 24-hour check-ins. Now, to make matters worse, in stepped Don Matrick, then president of Interactive Entertainment at Microsoft, to further clarify some of Microsoft's announcements. Now, during a pre-E3 press briefing with game trailers, Matrick addressed concerns about the Xbox One's connectivity requirements, infamously stating,
"Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
And then he compared gamers without internet access to people living on submarines, which apparently he read in some blog somewhere. Mattrick left Microsoft for Zynga 20 days later. In August, Microsoft dropped the Kinect requirements from the Xbox One, announced the Indie Focus ID at Xbox initiative, which is still going strong to this day, and announced Fable Legends, a game that was eventually canceled in 2016. Ahead of Xbox One's launch, Microsoft issued a statement saying that Kinect data would not be used to identify users, but that voice chat may be monitored to the extent permitted by law. However, in 2019, Microsoft contractors came forward to say that the Kinect was indeed used to listen to users' voice commands in order to integrate that particular data into Microsoft's Cortana AI, though these instances were low and Cortana was removed eventually from the Xbox homepage. On November 22nd, 2013, the Xbox One launched in 21 territories with titles like Dead Rising 3, Forza Motorsport 5, Rise, Son of Rome, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, and Call of Duty Ghosts. The Xbox One sold 1 million units in 24 hours and over 2 million in its first 18 days on the market.
The first 6 months of the Xbox One went slowly. In early 2014, Microsoft bought the rights to the Gears of War franchise and named Black Tusk, eventually the Coalition, its new developers. Titanfall was the first hit Xbox One exclusive in March, but it wasn't until the end of the console's first full quarter on the market that things started to change. In a move that would be looked upon as one of Microsoft's smartest decisions, Phil Spencer was named head of Xbox on March 31st, 2014. In the coming years, Spencer would be a much-needed gamer-friendly face of the Xbox. Also, he never once told Xbox fans to go buy a 360 instead, so he had that going for him. At E3 2014, Microsoft regained more ground. It dropped the price of the Xbox One to $399 by removing the Kinect. Plus, notable Xbox exclusives were announced at that E3, including Scalebound and a Phantom Dust revival, both of which were eventually canceled. However, its attempts to secure console exclusives continued with the announcement in August of 2014 that Microsoft had acquired the timed exclusive rights to Rise of the Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider fans were none too pleased. The series had long been associated with the PlayStation, and Microsoft's timed exclusivity seemed like a direct response to the impending release of Sony's Uncharted 4 from Naughty Dog.
In September of 2014, Microsoft bought Mojang, the creators of Minecraft, one of the most popular and influential games of all time, for $2.5 billion. This move would foreshadow Microsoft's efforts to buy studios later in the Xbox One's lifecycle. In October, Sunset Overdrive, probably the most underrated Xbox One exclusive, was released by longtime Sony collaborator Insomniac Games. As the Xbox One's first year came to a close, Microsoft released Halo, the Master Chief Collection. Though it was initially plagued with issues, it was eventually patched and updated to the point where IGN re-reviewed it in 2019, awarding it a 9.5 out of 10.
I am a monument to all your sins.
The first half of 2015 was relatively quiet for the Xbox One, save for the release of Ori and the Blind Forest. The back half of 2015, however, was absolutely loaded with news and games that helped steer the course and conversation for the Xbox One for the remainder of the generation. Microsoft came to E3 2015 ready to make waves. First and foremost, it addressed backwards compatibility. Beginning with 100 Xbox 360 games, Microsoft was laying the groundwork for what would eventually become Xbox Game Pass. The service had been in the works since the Durango era, but was backburnered by bureaucracy and shifting internal policies. Regardless of the history behind it, the announcement absolutely brought the house down and was a watershed moment for Microsoft at E3.
Today, I'm pleased to announce Xbox One backward compatibility.
Now, on top of that, Microsoft also announced its Elite controller, a high-end controller with a hefty price tag. Halo 5 Guardians made an appearance showing off its new Warzone multiplayer mode. Fans got a closer look at Gears of War 4, and an early access program called Xbox Game Preview. Suffice to say, E3 2015 was a huge success for Microsoft and the Xbox One. Also, HoloLens was there. I don't know, anyone remember HoloLens? That was a thing. Xbox wrapped 2015 strong with the launch of the long-awaited Halo 5 Guardians, which IGN awarded a 9 on the back of its fantastic multiplayer suite. Things felt back on track.
As the Xbox One rolled into its third year on the market, Microsoft continued to evolve and pivot its plans for the Xbox One and, at least publicly, began the Play Anywhere trajectory that it's still on today. In March, Microsoft renewed its commitment to PC gamers, announcing that all first-party Microsoft games would come to PC as well as the Xbox One, making good on nearly 2 years of promised PC support from Phil Spencer and solving generational software issues in one fell swoop. In another outwardly pro-consumer move, Microsoft allowed Xbox Live to play nice with other consoles by being the first of the big three to allow cross-platform play with Sony and Nintendo, should those manufacturers choose to participate, which they eventually did. Remedy's Quantum Break arrived in April of 2016, but things really began to heat up in May, when rumors started circulating about not one, but 2 iterative updates to the Xbox One. The first was said to be a smaller, cheaper version of the Xbox One, but the second rumored console, reportedly called Project Scorpio, really had people buzzing. This upgraded Xbox was supposedly 4 times more powerful than the current Xbox One and was engineered to handle full 4K resolution. Both of these rumors turned out to be true at E3 2016 when the Xbox One S was officially revealed. In a flashy, tech-heavy trailer, Microsoft also officially announced Project Scorpio, confirming rumors of a faster GPU and bringing the word teraflops into the limelight in a way that no one could have predicted. On February 28, 2017, Microsoft announced Xbox Game Pass, the evolution of its backwards compatibility efforts. Debuting with over 100 games for the Xbox One and Xbox 360, the service allowed gamers to store games locally for full fidelity gameplay on their consoles at $10 per month. The service officially launched on June 1st and came to PC in 2019. Game Pass is now nearly synonymous with the Xbox. It has over 15 million subscribers as of September of 2020, and it continues to be a massive selling point today.
The Xbox One X, formerly known as Project Scorpio, was revealed at E3 2017 as the most powerful console ever made. This tiny powerhouse took the PlayStation 4 Pro to task with more RAM, a faster CPU, and a 6 teraflop GPU. At $499, it was more expensive than the PS4 Pro by $100, but that didn't stop it from breaking Microsoft pre-order records in August, selling out immediately in many countries. One of the more interesting stories of E3 2017, however, happened off-stage. The cross-platform discussion took an odd turn when Sony's Jim Ryan traded barbs with Phil Spencer, calling the safety of Microsoft's Minecraft players into question when asked about Sony's crossplay support, or lack thereof. Spencer responded saying that Ryan's comments didn't seem healthy for anyone, and that the safety of Minecraft players on any platform was incredibly important to Xbox. In September of 2018, Fortnite accidentally enabled crossplay between Xbox and PlayStation for an entire weekend, to which Spencer responded, "I would have liked to see them leave it on." The original Xbox One was discontinued on August 26, 2017, 5 days after Xbox One X's record-setting pre-orders went live. Cuphead was released on September 29th, followed by Forza Motorsport 7 on October 3rd, but they were among a limited handful of Xbox exclusives released that year, including Halo Wars 2 and the long-awaited Phantom Dust Revival turned remaster. When the Xbox One X finally arrived on November 7th, 2017, the lack of first-party support was readily apparent.
To ease this pain point somewhat, at the top of 2018, Microsoft announced that all Microsoft Studio games would come to Game Pass on launch day, starting with the swashbuckling Sea of Thieves. First-party titles were rare, but at least now they were all included with a Game Pass entry fee. Microsoft also turned its attention to an underrepresented gaming community. The adaptive controller was built specifically for gamers with limited mobility or conditions that made traditional controllers difficult to use. Widely considered one of the more important innovations in accessibility for gamers, the adaptive controller helped usher in conversations about accessibility to a much broader audience. So now, heading into E3 2018, the conversation around the Xbox One was strictly focused on that glaring lack of first-party games. Now, in the previous year, the PlayStation 4 had racked up exclusive hits like Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted Lost Legacy, Gravity Rush 2, and God of War. Xbox was struggling.
Many of Microsoft's previously announced heavy hitters had been canceled or delayed multiple times, and more than one of its key studios had been shuttered since the Xbox One's launch. Phil Spencer had acknowledged Xbox's first-party issues the previous fall, but E3 2018 would prove to be an opportunity to course correct. Announced on stage at the Xbox 2018 E3 press conference, Microsoft welcomed Playground Games, makers of Forza Horizon, Undead Labs, makers of State of Decay, Ninja Theory, they of Hellblade, and Compulsion Games, who made We Happy Few, into the Xbox family as first-party studios. Joining these was The Initiative, a new first-party AAA studio led by Daryl Gallagher, known for his work on the Tomb Raider and Thief franchises. That was 5 first-party studios added to Microsoft's roster for those keeping count. And speaking of first-party games, what would an Xbox E3 press conference be without Halo? Halo Infinite, the latest entry in the long-running first-person shooter franchise, was revealed with a stunning 2-minute trailer that showed off a modernized art style running on a new game engine. Perhaps more interesting than a new Halo announcement were the rumors that Halo Infinite would help launch Microsoft's forthcoming next-generation console, codenamed Project Scarlet, in late 2020. Microsoft had big plans for 2019 though, and after Sony backed out of E3, Xbox had an opportunity to double down on the previous year's deluge of announcements. Though Microsoft suffered a setback in the very underwhelming response to the Xbox exclusive Crackdown 3, E3 2019 was a way to shout out some big announcements and gain back some ground. Speculation began to swirl that a new Xbox would be announced at that E3. The Xbox One, now 6 years into its life cycle, had managed to evolve and adapt, but Microsoft needed something big.
While the Xbox Series X was officially revealed during Microsoft's E3 2019 press conference, the focus was games. Further reiterating their games-first philosophy and distancing themselves from the all-in-one messaging of the Xbox One's disastrous launch, Microsoft brought fans 11 world premieres and a whopping 14 games from its first-party studios, which now included veteran indie darling Double Fine Productions. In September, Gears 5 launched on the Xbox One family in the biggest first-party launch for Xbox since Halo 4 in 2012. By the end of 2019, news had begun to shift toward the upcoming release of the Series X. Production on the Xbox One X and the Xbox One S All-Digital Edition was halted in June of 2020 as production for the Series X began to ramp up.
Despite an extremely rocky start, the Xbox One managed to secure a place in history as one of the most forward-thinking and innovative consoles ever produced. Now, while many criticize the Xbox One's lack of first-party support, Microsoft consistently made strides in addressing the concerns of their user base and took action to ensure that future generations of Xbox gamers would have bigger and better opportunities to enjoy exclusive first-party games. More than 100 million active monthly users prove that. Regardless of where the Xbox One stood in the marketplace, it was a console worthy of the generations that came before it.